Welcome, everyone. In today's MWSA author interview, we're interviewing James Bultema. Jim is a combat veteran and a retired LAPD officer with over 25 years of experience on the streets of Los Angeles. His debut novel, Sea of Red, became a bestseller, earning 6 prestigious awards and recognition as one of the top military thrillers of 2023. Red Lines became a #1 Amazon bestseller on its release. With a degree in history and a passion for thorough research, Bultema ensures his depictions of modern warfare and cutting-edge weaponry are as accurate as they are compelling. His riveting stories, full of unforgettable characters, resonate long after turning the final page. His new book, Arctic Red, was released just a little while ago on November 11th, 2025. Jim is joining me from Arizona. Hello and welcome.
Well, thanks a lot, John. It's a pleasure to be here, and might add, a pleasure to be a member of MWSA.
That's good to hear. And speaking of MWSA, let's start off at the beginning and let us know what drew you to MWSA and what did you hope to find by joining?
Well, I'm surprised it took as long as it did to discover the Military Writers Association, but I was doing research as I'm always online, writing a book, checking missiles, doing this, and I came across MWSA and I said, wow, this really sounds interesting. All military people that write. I got to be part of that. And so I joined you in San Diego at the meeting and just thoroughly enjoyed the camaraderie, the willingness to help, the information that was delivered to us. So we went to Kansas City this past meeting, and it was even better than the first. So I'm just excited that there's an organization that helps writers such as us in the military or retired, as most of us are. And I'm just excited about it. So excited. I mentioned I'd like to get on the board. I volunteered to be the membership chair. So you can tell from my actions, I really believe in this organization.
MWSA, you've mentioned it and everything. Can you give us a little bit more detail on how it's impacted your journey as a writer? Whether was it networking, learning, or opportunities to share your work? Which do you think most to help you out as far as being an
But what helped me
MWSA?
out most is the you can submit your books as you're the in charge of the book review. So I submitted one of my books, and the review came back, and it'd been something that I've been fighting in my books, and that's the order of events, a chronological order. And the reviewer mentioned that my timelines were off. It didn't really work. So I made an adjustment from those comments. And now from that book and the last book, both have that timeline right in the chapter heading. So that's pretty big. And my editor had mentioned it too. So I was just trying to not have to be so precise, but it's really important.
I think that is one of the things that kind of distinguishes MWSA is our author feedback. And just so everyone knows that the reviewers are submitting comments about each book that they review, and they serve two purposes. They kind of justify their scoring because, of course, we're also looking at giving awards out based on our evaluations. So each reviewer, three of them in total, only one of them writes the official review that goes to our website, but all three are submitting comments which go back to the author. So those comments both explain why they scored what they did, but they also provide feedback to the author. So you're saying that yours actually resulted in some changes to
Yes.
your book. So
Yeah. To me, a major change.
let's see. Let's move on to your specific away from MWSA for a while and talk about your journey as a writer. You spent 2 decades with the LAPD and served as a combat veteran. How did those experiences shape your decision to tell your story and to become an author?
Well, I was never the best student in high school, but when I joined LAPD, I noticed something unusual. that separated me from a lot of the other officers, and that was I enjoyed writing reports. Most officers, they hear that they get a report call, they want to go the other way. I was just the opposite. I carried a little pocket dictionary. This is before phones and all that stuff. I carried a pocket dictionary, kept notes in there, things attorneys would tell me when I went to court that this is a better way to present it, and just really paid attention to the art of report writing, and was complimented on my reports. And so that's the first preview I had that, hey, this writing is fun. And so my wife and I did a documentary on the history of LAPD. I wrote the script for that. That was my first formal writing of anything that resembled a book. And then later took that script and turned it into a book, History of Los Angeles Police Department. And from there, I just have been writing ever since.
So you basically you started off in the nonfiction world and then moved to fiction. So your debut novel, Sea of Red, won several awards and recognition. What was it that kind of talked you into making that jump into fiction?
All right, that's a good question. After writing, oh, I think 5 history books dealing with law enforcement, I just, it's nonfiction. You're footnoting it. Everything has to be precise. The dialogue, if you use it, you have to be able to document that. I just said, I would like to try it and make stuff up and just have fun with the dialogue and characters and personalities. So I decided to, and I've always been a military buff. And so I decided to write Sea of Red. It's about a war between the US and China over Taiwan. And as I mean, you still read that book came out 2 years ago. It's like it's so current right now. But so that turned out real well. And now I'm in the fifth on the series of Sea of Red and just finished another one a couple of days ago. So very exciting. I love novels. I'm not going back to nonfiction.
A lot more fun being in control.
Yeah. And making
Although,
things up.
yeah, although sometimes I find characters kind of they take control and send me in directions I didn't originally plan on. So
No,
anyway,
that's true.
a lot of your reviewers talk about the realism, praise the realism in your book. You're getting lots of positive feedback as far as that goes. How do you balance those your lived experiences, both in policing and the military, and incorporate those with your storytelling?
As you know, having been in the military yourself, there's that camaraderie between uh, the the people that you hang with, just the dialogue, the way you talk, the way you release pressure, the jokes, all of that. Uh, that's what I really cherish. And so that helped me when you're writing dialogue, you can relate, make it clear to the reader what people are thinking, saying, and doing. And it's very real because I lived it, I've done it. And so I think that aspect really helps me. The other aspect is my degree is in history, so I'm a solid researcher when it comes to doing anything to do with the subject at hand. And so if I'm researching a weapon, I make sure I have everything right. How to fire that weapon, how the enemy defends against that weapon. And so everything's very accurate. And I might add that Chat GPT or any type of AI is such a big help. With Sea of Red, when I wrote that, I would have to take like 2 days to write a page. It's all the research, and Google's fine, but it gives you so much stuff you really don't need. You need to cut to the chase. And AI does that. So if I ask what an SM-6 missile can do, it lays it out exactly what it can do and how to defend against it if it's the enemy. So I think research and making sure you get it right. I mean, you got to get it right. If you're writing stuff and you have the wrong weapon doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason, you're going to lose credibility. And as a military author, you got to get it right. So uh, I really concentrate on that.
Let's move to your books and the themes that you have going. You have a now a whole series, your Sea of Red series, and it's grown into multiple volumes. What inspired the general premise, and how do you keep the tension going as you move from one book to the next?
Well, each book is a standalone book. I use the same characters, but I reestablish the characters in each book, so you don't have to read see a red to know what's happening attack within. So I just concentrate on, you can call it a war, a conflict, whatever. See a red was China. Attack from within has to do with domestic terrorism and Hezbollah. That there's Dearborn, Michigan has hundreds of thousands of Muslims, and I just took an example of a young boy there and how he turned radical and I can't give it away for the people who haven't read it. So that it was an attack within our own country. I've done a war with Iran and their nuclear missile sites and how that went. And Arctic Red, of course, takes place in Greenland in the Arctic, just like you've read about President Trump wanting to make it part of NATO or whatever his thoughts are. Anyways, so Arctic Red takes place there, the Russians and the U.S. And the book I just finished is North Korea and the United States. So same characters, just different conflicts over several years.
You've kind of touched on the transition between the nonfiction and fiction. Um, can you give us a little bit more in the way of details on how your process is different with those two different genres?
Well, I don't think they're all that much different. Is nonfiction and even fiction, you got to get the information correct, the facts right. Even though obviously fiction, you're making things up, you still, like I just said, have to get it right. So they're really quite similar in that respect. It's just much more fun for me as an author to write fiction and anything to do with the military. I mean, I only did 4 years in the Air Force, but it was an important time in my life and something that really helped me. Wouldn't change it.
Okay, and we've already discussed how it's a lot more fun doing nonfiction. So let's uh, let's return to Arctic Red, and what specifically sets this one apart from the earlier works in the series?
Well, it really isn't. The only thing is the location where the conflict, the war takes place. They're all similar in that respect. I like to use the F-35 because it's such a great aircraft, and uh, but all my books I use submarines. I have sonar officers and doing their thing, and all that research is unbelievable. To know what sonar officer does on a submarine, being in the Air Force, I have no clue. I don't think anybody does. So I just researched the heck of that, and once again, AI really helps with that because they give you the specifics. I mean, they can cite the naval manual about the job of what a sonar operator does, and I just take that and develop a character around that and give that person a personality and make it interesting. I remember I had a sonar officer on a submarine that was Native American, and I tied it into the fact that her great grandfather was a code talker. So I thought that was kind of interesting that her grandfather was a code talker, and now she's doing the same sort of thing aboard the submarine.
Let's move to writing and service, military service in this case, or community, not community service, but policing service, law enforcement, bridging the worlds. Uh, do you feel that your background as both a veteran and a police officer gives you any unique view on leadership, conflict, or justice that goes into your writing?
Anybody who's been in the military and been in war knows it, what that does to you as a person. I remember as a youngster, I volunteered for the military. I volunteered for Vietnam, and they sent me to Vietnam. They sent me behind lines. I wanted to be in a combat zone. I volunteered for that. It's just the DNA in me. That's what I'm all about. And so when I write about that, I think a lot of my characters reflect some of that. Though it's all different type of characters. Some go by the book, and we've all been around them, and some that say throw the book on the floor and say, no, this is a way to get it done to achieve your objectives. So I think the experiences I had in the military and LAPD, which is just another type of war, it's gangs, it's drugs, and it's every day I work patrol. I mean, I was out on the streets. It's and then that camaraderie once again between officers. Who's got your six? To me, that's the best compliment you can give someone. I have your six. They have your back. I mean, to me, that's the ultimate. And when you work with people like that, that you know they got your back and you're performing the things that you have to do in a 10-hour shift, it's special. And I try to get that in my books, that camaraderie, the feeling between the characters. When you lived it, it's a lot easier to write it.
I'm going to go a little bit off script here. We're talking about the bad guys and that sort of thing. I was just wondering, as you were talking, did you ever find that some of the, as a police officer, that some of the quote unquote bad guys that you had to deal with were almost where they were so bad that they could be characters in the novels? Did you actually run across that as a police officer, where the bad guys were really bad?
Yeah, really bad, but most of them are really dumb. I mean, that's why they're crooks. So I could never, just most of them were dirtbags. You know, what else can I say? They're breaking the law, they're doing things. And I don't think I ever met a bad guy that mm, impressed me at all with this. Wow, that was really smart. Now, they're all dumb. And I don't know
So
how that sounds for our recording, but that's just an LAPD cop, 25 years in the streets. That's what I've walked away with.
okay. All right, so sorry, that just popped into my head. I was wondering if any of them were really. I guess a lot of writers on TV are going close to. I mean, they're just making stuff up as they go along, and having all these incredibly brilliant bad guys and everything. So,
Right.
well, let's move on to challenges. What do you find the most difficult part in the writing that requires discipline? Is research, marketing, dialogue? What is it that you've put up there on the list of hard things to do?
Well, I've never had writer's block, and I've been writing for a long time now. It's just I sit down and it just goes. So that part I'm fortunate. I never, I'm the type of writer. And during Kansas, you have a name for it. I had never heard about that, where you sit down at the computer, you know the general story you're going to tell, but you let it go. What do you call that? As you write the book at the beginning of the day, you don't know where you end up at the end of the day.
We call it the tension between the outliners and the pantsers. Pantsers being the ones that are kind of going by the seat of their pants.
Yeah, answers. So for me, I have a general idea what I'm going to write about the China versus U.S. over Taiwan. I mean, you can use the news press releases that for a lot of that stuff to give you ideas. But the other important thing is marketing. And one of the things I need to stress, I produce my own books. I don't have any big uh, publisher, but in order for that to work, and it works for me, is marketing. I'll spend like the last, well, I do it all the time. I mean, a couple hours a day before I even write, or at the end of the day when I'm done writing, is marketing. Uh, I write my own ads, so the color has to be right, the fonts have to be right, the background has to be right. And guess who helps me with that? Not an artist, AI. So I feed AI. Here's the ad I wrote. Well, you need to move that font over a little bit. You're crowding this. I would try this color. And then you run ads. And so I'll run a 24-hour ad with this color, with this font. You change one thing, run it for another 24, and you just keep building and experimenting. And then pretty soon all this information comes back and you know exactly what works with your readers. And then you use that and then you really flood the market with your ads, whether it be Amazon, Google, or what I like best is BookBubs. BookBubs, you should write that down if you're listening to this. That's the best there is. They have like 5 million subscribers, and every day they send out information on uh, books that these people might be interested in. And so BookBubs has been fabulous for me. And I mean, I've used it every single day since Sea of Red came out. And to this, I mean, Arctic Red is all over. I've been just before you and I got on the phone or on this video, I was working on Arctic Red, trying different authors to support that might be interesting. You put in an author uh, and that read or write similar to you, and you use their names. So then, when people that like those authors see them, your name pops up with it. So it's a fine science, and like I mentioned to you before, I'd like to do a class on that when we're in Orlando, Florida next year, and talk to people about marketing because uh, it's important, especially when you're producing your own book and doing your own thing. It's really critical. No one's going to look at your book just because you wrote it and you think it's the best thing in the world. It may be, but you got to get the word out there. You got to market it, and you got to work as hard as you do in writing that book and marketing that book. You you just have to do it.
That's true. It's definitely true. So basically, you found a way to make one of the challenges something that's maybe not quite as onerous. When you have to learn what to do and then get involved with your marketing. That was the challenging part. What about rewards? What is the most rewarding moment in your writing career so far?
That's easy. I As we all know, you write your first book, you really have no idea if it works. You think it works, you wrote it and you released it. So for me was with Sea of Red was the first. By the way, you should send your books out to have it reviewed. Yeah, you got to pay for most of them, but whatever. It's important to get that feedback, critical feedback, just like you guys do for free or whatever. There might be a charge, I don't know, but that is so important as an author. So when I got the first review back for Sea of Red, it was a 5-star review. They just loved it and so forth. And and I just remember reading that email. I had tears coming down my cheeks. I was just so excited to get that confirmation that yes, here's a book critic that does this for a living, read my book and loved it. So that moment um, was why I'm still writing.
Well, that's an interesting point. It's good to have the positive things that kind of keep you motivated and moving forward. How about do you have any advice for veterans? Most of us are either veterans or we know veterans in the MWSA, first responders and others that are considering writing their own stories. What advice would you give them?
Well, first off, I understand a lot of the reason we exist, the organization is to help writers, and a lot of writers want to write about their experiences, whether it be in a war or just in the military. And it's very cleansing, very rewarding. I know when I wrote an article for MWSA about my experiences in Vietnam, I had never written a word about what I did in Vietnam and the death and the buddies you lose and that sort of thing. So writing that really was very powerful for me. And as I know it is, and that's why a lot of retired military people write about their life in the military. The only thing you got to understand is there's a lot of memoirs out there, and it's good that you do it to help yourself. But if you want to take it to the next step, get that memoirs out there, feel better about everything, and then write a solid novel about a subject. It can be anything or any subject. So I would just say memoirs are great, but for me, I haven't written a memoir. I just enjoy writing the scenes and battles and the fights and the personalities and everything that is involved with conflict and war.
That's one thing in my experience. I agree with you on that one with the memoirs, and I think would you agree that probably the most important thing is just to start writing, get it on paper first. You can always figure out, you can always go from nonfiction to fiction, but the first step is always to get something on paper, and also obviously to read a lot yourself, because the more you read, the better a writer you're going to be.
Yeah, I agree with reading a lot. I think anybody that reads a lot is going to be a good author. But yeah, you just got to start. Oh, I've had this idea for, okay, fine. You've had the idea. Now do it. I mean, you got to do it. You got to sit down and start writing whatever it is and see where that takes you. And I'll bet the clear majority of those that take that advice and just start writing, that it'll open up a whole new world to you. Uh, I can't imagine people would start writing and not love it. I mean, you've talked about it. My suggestion is do it.
Oh, but just like me, you've heard a lot of people say when you tell them that you're writing a book or have written, published, whatever, they say, "Oh, I've always wanted to do that." So that's good advice. Just start working. You can figure out some of the
Yeah.
details later. In wrapping things up here, what's next for you, both as a writer and as a member of MWSA? Well, you mentioned volunteering for the board and everything, so I think you covered that pretty well. But what about your writing projects? What's next for you?
Okay, I want to talk about writing projects, but before I forget, I want to suggest to those that are listening to make sure you have a good editor. All my books, I have two editors. I have one that was in the military, U.S. Air Force Academy graduate, career officer. She was a colonel, but she happens to be an editor, so she brings insight. I was had a scene in one of my books where I'm talking about graduation. Well, I was enlisted, so I didn't know what it was like to sit as a Air Force cadet and with everybody around. So she gave me all that insight because she's been there and done that. But the point is, you need an editor. I have two. She does great. It helps me with my storytelling. The second editor is so good at grammar that what the first one misses, she gets. So the point I'm making, yes, it's expensive. So are professional covers. You got to pay to have your covers done. I do. And because that's what sells a book. People are scanning Amazon. They're going through hundreds of books, seeing what they want to read next. You better have a good cover to grab their attention. And then you better have good editing because they're going to read that book. If they see mistakes on the first 10 pages, they're going to put that book away and they'll never buy another one from you. So you've got to, like we said, start writing. But once you get beyond that writing stage, you take it to the next level. Make sure you have an editor, a professional cover designer, and those things are important. So you want to gain credibility with your readers. So you got to be very careful and not make mistakes.
Okay, and you were going to, that was your recommendations. Were you going to talk, eventually you have to tell us what you're going to do next. What's on
Sorry
tap?
about that. I get carried away about certain parts of your writing that are so important. I just want to make sure that those listening understand that it is important. For me, I just finished this book, like I mentioned, between North Korea and the U.S. Nuclear weapons are involved because I've always wanted to. I've talked about it in other books. In Iran, they were going to try to use one, but I think it's important, maybe more for me, but about tactical field nuclear weapons. The Russians talk about it all the time. People talk about what does it mean. So in this book that it's called Red Horizons, that's what I address: a nuclear weapon and what it can do, and I mean down to the details of burning eyes and what it's just such a horrible thing. I just felt compelled to write about it, and so it's I did, and it's not fun to read, but it gives I think, the reader an idea. So you hear about a tactical field nuclear weapon. What does that mean? You'll know what it means if you read my book. It's something we just have to avoid at whatever cost. And then the question is, so if the bad guys use one, what do you do? Do you respond in kind? And so I really address that in the White House and in the Situation Room and the arguments about why we should. Same with the Koreans. Should we launch another one? Should we do that? So there's a lot of behind the scenes that it's to get the dialogue about what people are thinking about using nuclear weapons, and then I take it to the streets and protest and what about how our country, in my view, would respond to having a nuke involved with our military, not giving anything away. So I I really feel good about what I put down on paper. So we'll see.
So for all those readers who just picked up and are finishing up Arctic Red, when's your next one? Do you have a timeline for when the next one might be
No,
available?
I usually release about 2 books a year. So I would say probably in about 6 months that'll be out there. The editing phase takes a long time. And then once after you get it edited, you want to get it out there and get it reviewed. So you got to send it. And if you want to get a review, fine, you pay for it. But they charge more if you want it. Well, I got to have it in a month or 2 months. You got to allow for their lowest price to say, yeah, okay, 3 months is fine, and it's like half price, and you get the same results. It's just you can't rush this thing, so you got to build all those timelines in. But very important to get the book reviewed. There's a lot of arguments online about that, but I'm telling you, it's important. I've won several awards, fortunately, and I think that gives you credibility, especially if you go to some of the big houses that do this.
Well, it's been a great conversation, Jim. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciated getting together. And as president of MWSA, I really appreciate that you're stepping up to the plate and offering to help us out and already helping out as our membership chair. So thanks very much for joining us today.
Right. Well, I'm not one to sit on my hands. I sound like a recording, but it's such a great organization. And if anybody's listening to this and is not a member, and you like writing or you are in the military, you got to get involved. At least join. I mean, you got a discount running right now. What, $50 for a year? That you guys are eating some of the costs. I think that's fabulous.
Yep, 50 is the regular, so it's $25 a year, which is a great bargain.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, and I'm glad to give you my 2 cents on my experiences.
Well, thanks again for joining us.